Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Court Vision Plus, the channel that finds the story inside the moment inside the moment, and the human drama hiding underneath the statistics that everyone else leads with. Today we have something genuinely special. Something that started as a post-match press conference, became a viral moment, and has since exploded into one of the most wholesome, most entertaining, most talked about exchanges the women's tennis world has seen in the 2026 season so far. It involves two of the most electrifying young players on the entire planet. It involves a crowd that came ready to party. It involves a joke that landed so perfectly it broke the internet in the best possible way. And it involves Coco Gauff, the 21-year-old who is quietly, steadily, and with a level of statistical dominance that borders on the surreal, rewriting the record books of women's tennis in real time while making it look almost effortless. Almost. Because what happened on the court before the joke was anything but effortless. It was a war, a grinding, nerve-shredding, double-fault-riddled, match-point-surviving war that had absolutely nobody in that arena breathing comfortably for the better part of 2 hours and 15 minutes. But Coco survived. Coco always seems to survive. And then, with the crowd still buzzing from the drama they had just witnessed, she walked up to the microphone and delivered the line that is currently plastered across every tennis forum, every Filipino fan page, and every sports highlight account on the internet. So settle in, court visionaries. This one has everything. Let us go from the very beginning. To truly appreciate the joke, you first have to appreciate the match, because the joke does not land the same way if you do not understand the specific, chaotic, nail-biting, almost went wrong energy of what preceded it. And what preceded it was Coco Gauff versus Elisa Mertens, a match that on paper looked like a straightforward progression for the world number one toward another deep tournament run. On paper. Tennis has a long and well-documented history of making a fool out of paper. Mertens is not just any opponent filling out a draw. She is a seasoned, battle-tested professional with a career that has taken her deep into the final rounds of Grand Slam tournaments, a player who has been in enough pressure situations to know exactly how to make life uncomfortable for opponents regardless of how the ranking numbers compare. She is one of those players who does not show up to survive. She shows up to compete. And on this particular day, in the particular way that the tennis gods occasionally arrange things simply because they can, she came agonizingly close to doing something that would have shaken the entire tournament to its foundation. Because Coco Gauff, on this day, was not the Coco Gauff who walks onto a court and dismantles opponents with the smooth, inevitable efficiency of a world number one operating at the top of her considerable powers. On this day, Coco Gauff was human. Beautifully, frustratingly, almost self-destructively human. 16 double faults. Read that again slowly and let the full absurdity of it wash over you. 16 double faults. In a professional tennis match from the world number one at a WTA 1000 event, 16 times the ball went into the net or sailed beyond the service box. 16 free points handed directly to Elisa Mertens as though Coco was running some kind of charitable giveaway from the baseline. 4 free service games just given away. No resistance, no rally required. Step up, catch the gift, sit back down. The double fault count is the kind of statistic that would have commentators reaching for increasingly creative vocabulary to describe what was happening. It is the kind of number that, if you texted it to a knowledgeable tennis friend without context, they would assume you had made a typo. Surely you mean 6. Surely there is a 1 missing from somewhere. No, 16. And yet Coco Gauff saved 2 match points and won the match. Because that is who Coco Gauff is. That is the specific, maddening, wonderful brand of tennis she plays. She is capable of giving the match away through the sheer volume of unforced errors she sometimes generates, and simultaneously capable of finding a defensive gear when it truly matters that makes her practically impossible to close out. You can hand her the worst service day of her career in a professional tournament, push her all the way to the edge of elimination, put 2 match points on the board, and she will still find a way to make you feel, at the end of it, like somehow you ran out of runway before she did. This is not entirely new information for anyone who follows her closely. The historical precedents are genuinely remarkable. There was the match where she accumulated 21 double faults and still walked away with the win. There was the legendary encounter in Montreal against Danielle Collins, where she served up 23 double faults in front of a crowd that could not decide whether to be horrified or amazed, and still won that match too. 23 double faults in a match she won. The mind genuinely struggles to contain that information within the normal frameworks it uses to process tennis statistics. What those numbers tell you is something that statistics alone can never fully convey. They tell you that Coco Gauff's greatest competitive weapon is not her serve, which on days like this is clearly not something she can fully rely on. It is not her forehand, though that is a formidable weapon at its best. It is her defense, her ability to dig deep when the offense has completely abandoned her and find something rawer and more fundamental than technique, something closer to pure, bloody-minded refusal. She buckles down, she gets stops. She makes the opponent play one more ball and then one more after that until the match is over and she is the one still standing. 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2 match points erased, 16 double faults papered over by the sheer relentlessness of her competitive instinct. Coco Gauff advances to the quarterfinal, and then she walked up to the microphone and the real story began. The post-match interview atmosphere in a major WTA event is its own particular experience. The crowd is still warm from the match they just watched. The energy in the arena has not fully dissipated. Players often use this moment to connect with the audience directly, to show a personality that the intensity of competition sometimes obscures, and occasionally to say something that resonates far beyond the room it was spoken in. Coco Gauff has always been comfortable in this moment. At 21 years old, she carries a media presence and a natural charisma that most athletes spend decades trying to develop and many never fully achieve. She is articulate. She reads the room instinctively. She knows how to be funny without trying too hard, and she knows how to be genuine in a context where performative emotion is the industry standard. It is one of the many reasons she has become not just the most decorated young tennis player in the modern era, but genuinely one of the most compelling public figures in all of sport. So when she stepped up to address the crowd with the match finally and dramatically in the rearview mirror, everyone in that arena was ready to receive whatever she offered. They were warm, they were grateful, they were the specific kind of relieved that an audience feels after watching the person they came to see navigate something genuinely difficult and come out the other side intact. What they were not fully prepared for was the line that came next. Coco looked out at the crowd, let the moment breathe for just a beat, and then delivered it with the timing of someone who has been performing in front of audiences their entire life. Sorry to keep you waiting. I know you probably came here for Alex. The arena did something interesting in the immediate aftermath of that line. There was a half second of collective processing, the audience working out what she had just said, hearing it land, and then deciding how to receive it. And then the response came in 2 simultaneous waves that crashed together into something genuinely wonderful. Laughter. Real laughter. The kind that is unplanned and immediate and tells you that the joke connected exactly where it was aimed. And then, riding just underneath and behind the laughter, a cheer. An enormous, warm, celebratory cheer that communicated in the most unambiguous terms possible that this crowd was not letting a joke at their own expense go unanswered, because that cheer said what the crowd needed to say back. We came here for you, Coco. You are the reason. You are the face of this sport. You are the rock star, and we are absolutely thrilled that you won. Coco, clearly delighted by the response and completely in her element, followed the joke by pointing directly at the American flags scattered throughout the crowd. Born in the USA, ladies and gentlemen, home support making itself known in the most enthusiastic way possible. The arena loved it, every bit of it. The self-deprecating joke, the crowd's refusal to let it land without a counter, and the flag acknowledgement that closed the exchange with the kind of easy, warm, unforced energy that cannot be rehearsed or manufactured. It simply happens when the right person is in front of the right crowd at the right moment. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. The combination of the dramatic match context, the perfectly timed joke, the crowd's response, and the names involved made it the definition of shareable, because it contained within 30 seconds everything that makes tennis genuinely entertaining beyond the baseline rallies and the ranking points. It had personality, it had humor, it had the specific warmth of 2 athletes who are clearly comfortable enough with each other and with their respective places in the sport to be the subject of a joke without anyone's feelings getting bruised. And it had, sitting just beneath the humor, something genuinely touching about the relationship between Coco Gauff and Alexandra Eala and what it says about where women's tennis is right now. Let us talk about that relationship for a moment because it deserves more than a passing reference. The connection between Coco Gauff and Alex Eala is one of the most genuinely heartwarming subplots in the current women's game, and it goes back further than most casual fans realize. These two did not become aware of each other at the professional level. They grew up in the same tennis world. They came up through the junior ranks during overlapping periods. They competed against each other before either of them had a single WTA ranking point to their name. And in that world, before the endorsement deals and the Netflix documentaries and the record books, they were just two extraordinarily gifted young women who loved tennis and who recognized something in each other that you only recognize in people who are operating at the same uncommon level of commitment and ability. The doubles partnership they formed, which became a moment that fans still talk about with a reverence that is frankly remarkable for what was essentially a partnership of convenience at a specific tournament, was a window into something real. When you watch footage of them playing together, what you see is not just two skilled players executing a game plan. You see two people who are genuinely comfortable in each other's energy, who communicate with the easy shorthand of athletes who understand each other's instincts, who celebrate each other's winners with a joy that is completely unperformed. It is the kind of chemistry that cameras love because it is actually there. The fan demand for a repeat of that doubles partnership has been consistent and vocal. Every time the two players are at the same tournament, the conversations start up again in every tennis forum and comment section and fan page that covers the women's game. The appetite for seeing them share a court as partners rather than opponents is genuine and large and shows no signs of diminishing with time. If anything, as both of their individual profiles have grown, the idea of them playing doubles together again has become one of those tantalizing what-ifs that the tennis world periodically returns to like a favorite song it cannot quite get out of its head. Coco's joke in the post-match interview was not just a one-liner, it was a public acknowledgement of exactly this dynamic. She was saying out loud in front of a crowd and cameras that would carry the moment around the world that she understands the specific electricity that Alex Eala generates, that she is fully aware that her friend and rival has built a fan base of a size and a passion that fills arenas in ways that are remarkable and worth acknowledging. And she was doing it with humor because that is the language of people who are genuinely comfortable with each other, people who can laugh at the situation because the mutual respect underneath is solid enough that a joke cannot shake it. That is actually quite a sophisticated thing to do in a post-match interview. Acknowledging a rival's fan power in a way that is generous and funny rather than competitive and defensive requires a particular kind of confidence and emotional intelligence. And Coco Gauff, at 21 years old, delivered it with the ease of someone who has been operating with that level of emotional intelligence for her entire public life. Now let us give Coco Gauff her full flowers for a moment, because while the joke is the moment everyone is talking about, the statistical reality of what she is building in this sport is almost impossible to overstate and does not always get the breathless coverage it deserves. The most Masters 1000 wins in the Open era, at 21 years old. Read that sentence as many times as you need to before moving on, because it contains a level of historical significance that still somehow manages to sneak past the people who cover this sport on a daily basis without triggering the full alarm bells it ought to. The Open era of tennis is not a short window. It is decades of the sport's greatest players competing at the highest level, accumulating wins and records and milestones across long and decorated careers. And a 21-year-old has more Masters 1000 wins than any of them. Her 22nd Masters 1000 quarterfinal, also at 21, also a record, also something that the sport's most accomplished veterans were not doing at this age, which makes it all the more extraordinary that it is being done right now by someone who has not yet reached the age that many athletes consider the true beginning of their prime competitive years. The double fault paradox that defines her game adds a layer of fascination to all of this that purely statistical analysis cannot fully capture. Here is a player who can, on any given day, serve so badly that the numbers look like a malfunction in the data entry system, and then win the match anyway, and do it at a Masters 1000 event, against experienced world-class opponents who are fully capable of punishing even a slightly elevated error rate. The fact that she wins these matches despite handing away service games like they are going out of fashion tells you something profound about the depth of her competitive toolkit. The serve is one weapon among many, and when that weapon misfires, she reaches into the toolkit and finds something else, something rawer, something built from years of competing in the biggest moments and learning viscerally and experientially how not to lose when losing feels like the easier option. The stat line from the Mertens match is a study in contradiction. 16 double faults, only 45% of first serves finding the court, but 70% of the first serves that did find the court converted into points won. That is what elite defending looks like. That is what it means to be a world number one who has genuinely internalized that matches are won and lost, not just on the points you dominate, but on the points you refuse to surrender. Elisa Mertens, for all her quality and resilience and the genuine threat she posed over 2 hours and 15 minutes, could not find the final few points she needed when she needed them most. 2 match points presented, 2 match points repelled. That is Coco Gauff at the edge. That is what makes her singular. Now let us turn to the quarterfinal picture and what it means for both of our protagonists, because the implications of the draw going forward are where the storylines of this tournament truly converge in the most delicious way possible. Coco Gauff is in the quarterfinal, confirmed, waiting. On the other side of the draw, Alexandra Eala is still competing, still in the tournament, and the potential for a Gauff versus Eala quarterfinal clash is sitting there in the bracket, fully visible to everyone, impossible to look away from. The joke in the post-match interview suddenly takes on an additional dimension of meaning when you consider that the woman Coco was joking about might be the very next person standing between her and a Masters 1000 semifinal berth. That is the specific genius of the situation. It is funny because it is true. And it is true in a way that has direct, immediate, tournament-altering consequences. The crowd that Coco told they had come for Alex might very well be the same crowd cheering for Alex in the next round against Coco. Tennis is a sport that loves this kind of narrative construction. It hands you the material and then watches to see what the players do with it. The analytical picture is equally compelling. Looking at Eala's potential path through to that quarterfinal, the tactical questions are genuine and interesting for anyone who studies the women's game seriously. The left-handed forehand down the line that has become one of her most recognizable and effective weapons carries real risks against an opponent of Coco's caliber. That shot opens the court. It creates angles. And in doing so against a player of Gauff's defensive capability and footwork quality, it potentially provides exactly the invitation she needs to redirect and dictate on the next ball. It is the kind of chess problem that coaches and analysts spend hours dissecting in preparation meetings, balancing the undeniable effectiveness of the shot against the specific vulnerabilities it creates against certain opponents. But here is the counter to that analysis that Eala's supporters would, with complete justification, offer in return. Alex Eala has spent the last 18 months systematically proving that the conventional analysis of her game's limitations tends to underestimate both her tactical intelligence and her capacity for in-match adjustment. She has beaten top 10 players with the kind of clean, decisive performances that do not leave room for arguments about whether the result was a fluke. She has shown, repeatedly and on significant stages, that she can identify mid-match what is not working and make the adjustments that a less sophisticated tennis mind would either make too late or not make at all. If these two meet in the quarterfinal, and the bracket is certainly pointing in that direction, the narrative weight of that match will be extraordinary. The world number one with the record books and the post-match joke against the rising Filipino star who was the subject of that joke. The defending force of the sport against the force that is rising to challenge it. The crowd that cheered for Coco when they heard the joke against the crowd that showed up at least partially for Alex and would fill that arena with a noise that Coco herself would recognize and appreciate because she said as much at the microphone after her match. That match, if it happens, will be an event, not just a quarterfinal, an event.